There's this really fascinating paradox at the heart of enterprise AI today. On one hand, companies are pouring billions and billions of dollars into it. But on the other, when you look at the actual results, well, something's definitely missing.
And look, the investment side of this equation is just staggering. I mean, a massive 92% of companies aren't just keeping their AI spending steady, they're planning to crank it up over the next 3 years. So the financial commitment? Oh, it's there, for sure.
But, and this is the wild part, despite all that cash being spent, just a tiny 1% of business leaders would describe their own companies as mature in AI. Where AI is fully baked in and actually driving serious value. 1%. So that's really the big question we're tackling today, right? How do companies get from just throwing money at AI to actually using it to completely transform their business? How in the world do we bridge that enormous gap? All right, so here's our game plan. We're going to start by digging into that investment paradox. Then we'll check out what AI looks like in the wild. And finally, we'll lay out a playbook that covers everything from strategy and people all the way to governance. So first things first, why the huge rush to invest in the first place? Well, it's pretty simple, actually. The scale of the opportunity is just too massive to ignore. This isn't some trend on the horizon. It's a right here, right now business imperative. And we're not talking about some abstract, far-off benefits here. The value is super concrete. In healthcare, we're looking at a projected $148 billion market. In finance, nearly $500 billion in potential savings every single year. And in retail, a 35% jump in customer satisfaction. The numbers speak for themselves. And what this really does is highlight a crucial shift in thinking. The conversation for leaders has totally moved on from just, hey, what can this AI tech do, to the much more important question, okay, what should we be doing with AI for our business? It's not just a tech question anymore, it's a core strategy question. Okay, so enough with the theory, let's get real. Forget all the hype for a second. What does successful AI deployment actually look like out there in the wild? Let's take Lowe's, for example. Their challenge was huge. How do you give expert home improvement advice to every single customer, both online and in over 1,700 stores? Their solution was to deploy AI assistants for both their customers and their own employees. And the impact? They more than doubled their online conversion rate and saw a huge jump in in-store satisfaction. I mean, you can draw a straight line from that AI investment right to their bottom line. And hey, it's not just about customer-facing stuff either. Over at the bank BBVA, they had this constant internal problem where legal questions were creating bottlenecks and slowing everything down. So what did they do? They built an AI chatbot to handle all the common stuff. It now automates over 9,000 queries a year, and get this, it knocked out over a quarter of the entire legal department's annual savings goal. Just like that. And check out Moderna, where AI is fundamentally changing the speed of innovation. They had this critical step in their product development that used to take weeks of intense work. With AI, that process has been crushed down to just a matter of hours. Weeks to hours, that's a game changer. Okay, so we've seen why this matters and what it looks like in practice. Now let's talk about the how. Getting this right all starts with a rock-solid strategic foundation, what we're calling your AI playbook. It really boils down to 4 key decisions you have to make. First, do you have a clear, ambitious roadmap, or are you just running a bunch of random projects? Second, for the tools you need, are you going to build, buy, or partner? And finally, and this might be the most important one, is every single initiative you're working on linked to a real, measurable business outcome, with success metrics defined before you even start? That old saying is true. If you can't measure it, you can't manage it. So you've got to track specific things, like the extra revenue you're getting from an AI-powered campaign, or the sheer number of hours your team saves on manual tasks, or maybe a tangible lift in your Net Promoter Score. You have to be able to prove the value. All right, let's shift gears to what might just be the most critical piece of this entire puzzle: your people. Seriously, you can have the best technology in the world, but if your team isn't ready and on board, you will never, ever get to that 1% maturity level. And wow, is there a major disconnect here? When you ask leaders, they guess that only about 4% of their employees are heavy AI users. The reality? It's over 3 times higher, 13%. Your employees are already out there experimenting and adopting these tools, often way ahead of any official strategy. And they're not just playing around with these tools on their own. They're literally asking for your help, Nearly half of all employees say the single best thing a company can do to boost AI adoption is to provide formal training. This isn't people resisting change, it's a clear demand for empowerment.
And this all leads to a really cool idea called super agency. See, the goal here isn't to replace people with AI. It's about empowering them with tools that supercharge their own skills, making them more creative, more productive, and more impactful than ever before. So, how do you start making this partnership real? Well, one super practical way is to just get clear on who does what. Using a simple RACI chart for your AI projects makes it crystal clear who's responsible for doing the work, who's ultimately accountable for the results, and who just needs to be consulted or informed. It sounds simple, but it gets rid of so much confusion and really helps build momentum. Okay, so you've got your strategy, you're focused on your people. The final piece of the playbook is governance. Think of these as the guardrails that let your teams innovate and move fast, but safely and effectively, without creating a bunch of chaos. Now, this usually kicks off with a fundamental choice. When you're just starting out, a centralized model where one team sets and enforces all the rules can work really well. But as you get more mature, a federated model often strikes the perfect balance between having consistent standards and giving different teams the agility they need.
I love this way of thinking about it. It's a journey. Crawl, walk, run. First, you crawl by just getting a handle on all your data and AI models. Then, you walk by starting to automate some of your key policies. And finally, you run, when governance becomes so seamless and embedded in how you work that it's proactive and almost invisible.
And all of this really brings us to the single most important takeaway. The biggest roadblocks for companies today aren't the AI models or the tech tools anymore. No, the real bottleneck is organizational readiness, getting the strategy, the people, and the governance right. So, look, we've seen the paradox, we've seen the proof from companies out in the wild, and we've walked through the playbook. The final question isn't if your organization is going to use AI. That's a given. The real question is your organization actually ready to do what it takes to truly harness its power?